Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Thursday edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream crafting Icewind Dale, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you are playing characters of Robin, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, GTFO, this is not meant for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. There will be spoilers. Stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. Watch all of our D&D sessions and reviews here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Rogue Watson and join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. What more shall we plan for, lazy DM? Good afternoon, Morgan. Good morning, Nick. All around the world, we are streaming live. So, we're going to do our giant encounter, and we're going to get to Dark Duchess this week. I don't know how far we're going to make it into Dark Duchess, given how much the giant encounter could turn into a super nasty slog, or maybe not be as bad. I know some folks suggested, like, hey, be prepared for, ways that they can knock off the giant from the mammoth, which would certainly make it harder or easier for them. But also, I want to make that part of their tactics. That should be something they want to do, is try to knock the giant off of the mammoth. Be prepared for if Frey wants to use dynamite in the Dark Duchess scenario, which I just love the fact that ever since I gave them dynamite, that now I have to just prepare for them to use the dynamite every time, which is true of any, item that you give to players. You have to, it's very tricky to give powerful loot to players, because you have to foresee, like, so far into the future of when it becomes a pain in the ass. And in fact, in the Discord chat, we just recently talked about I think the Chardalyn bands of binding that Edmund uses frequently is probably my biggest regret, only because I thought that was gonna be like one of the many items he was gonna build, and instead I clearly made them, which I just copied off of Iron Bands of Bullaroo, I think they're called in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And he just wants to make those constantly because they're very powerful and useful. So, and maybe I can play around with. There were suggestions made that he can start suffering from maybe long-term Chardalyn exposure, which is something I've kind of teased in this campaign, that Chardalyn does corrupt. It has not happened to him really in the context of this campaign, but I could start maybe teasing that with his character, and maybe he gets a way of role playing that. But maybe I can also do a thing like, maybe he gets, I don't know, these weird lesions growing on his skin, or something that can be more physical as well. And it's one of those things where, hey, if you want to keep using it, then you can ignore these problems, and maybe they'll be exacerbated at some point, or you can stop cold turkey, and then you might even be healed by them. But so let's move on to, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about the giant encounter, let me know. But I do think we've talked about it a lot on these crafting streams, and as much as I'm looking forward to this battle and having that drain some very useful party resources, unless you all think I have specific we did talk about giving the giants the mounted combatant feat. Probably just the first part of that feat, which is that you have, I think he has advantage while he's on top. See if I can up again. You have advantage on melee rolls against any unmounted creature that is smaller than your mount. I would also give him the opposite of that and say that people have disadvantage unless they have some way of racing themselves up, like if Thimbleweed wants to use his hovering thing or something. They would have disadvantage on melee attacks. Only melee attacks, because that's just because of literally the height difference there. I don't think I'm going to necessarily give him the ability to force an attack target your mount to target you instead. That feels a little too powerful for a enemy to have without any kind of check or save involved, because the number of targets coming in means it would just constantly deflect. So it feels a little too much, and I mean, technically NPCs aren't really aren't engineered to have feats. So I'm just giving it some extra abilities because he's kind of like a Beastmaster giant. So at that point, it's kind of a variant stat block. He also does have the ability to throw his nets every turn, which I do like. That is basically, he doesn't have his normal rock attack though, so I'm kind of replacing that with, he's got his regular double attack spear, which is the same stats as the Great Axe, and then instead of hurling rocks, which do a ton of damage, he just hurls nets every turn, which restrains people, which eats up their action economy if it hits, which is pretty nice. So I'm a favor of that. I know your granddad used Charlotte every day his whole life and it's been fine. Party Monk knocked the giant out and really messed up my encounter. Hopefully yours goes better. Ooh, interesting. We'll see. I mean, ultimately it is a dice game, and it probably balances out in the long run if we look at every encounter over the long period of time. But there are individual encounters that can certainly go one way or the other just based on the dice. Even if they look, decently tense and balanced on paper, somebody could fail a nasty crowd control save, or just I get off, a crit with coming in with the mammoth and just stomp somebody out of existence right off the bat. Like, there's certainly been many fights that have been in my favor, and I think there's been plenty that have been in the party's favor as well. I did mention the fact that I would encourage them to actually have to spend something to convince their polar bear ally to actually help them fight. Otherwise, I may just montage these two polar bears fighting each other. Or if they don't really do anything with this bear, I might have him cower, and then all of a sudden I've added this polar bear as another enemy that's straight up going to fight them. Which, I mean, the fact that I've got the fact that a polar bear is like the least worrisome creature on this battlefield is pretty exciting, because usually polar bears are pretty nasty. And they can short rest after this fight, no problem. Oh, and the other thing that balances this fight is that this giant is not going to fight to the death. If he loses his mammoth, and or he is reduced to like 30% hit points, he's going to surrender. He's not there to fight for the death. He's not a crazed, zealot or something. He's just trying to basically get his bear back, or maybe rob them for some treasure. Once he realizes he's in over his head, because he can't tell how powerful they are, he will surrender. He will give up the location of Jarlmut as kind of a sign of respect, although what I'm going to have in my back pocket is that he will return later and try to kill them after they've been, gone through a whole adventuring day, which I think will be pretty fun. Which means hopefully they haven't killed his mammoth yet, or else he will come back a little bit. Maybe that's appropriate too. It'll just be him without the mammoth. I don't know. Although the token would be, I might have to use a different token then, because this one is clearly riding the mammoth. So I'm looking forward to that. Got a token for. I don't have a token for Ballista. I've just used the standard goblin token, but honestly, she's such a non-combatant that she just kind of hides in the wagon. She's almost just a part of the wagon at this point. The wagon could just always include Ballista in it. You can run too, yeah. That would be the least satisfying thing to do. I like the fact that he would, ultimately he does value strength and power. And I do think that if he realizes he's in over his head, he would straight up, surrender is probably something that maybe he wouldn't do formally, but he would at least say, okay, hey, I recognize you all are strong. Go to this location and then, prove this kind of strength to the great Jarls, and they will reward you. And, we'll let bygones be bygones, and I will leave. You guys can keep the bear. You've earned your bear. And I will leave with my shit. And maybe if the players even go further, like, well, you need to leave this bear behind or something, and maybe we can go along with that. But my goal is to try and get this giant to escape with his life. The context of that social encounter is going to change based on how this fight went. So if the players really kicked his ass, then maybe they'll feel like they can get whatever they want out of this giant, and that might be true in terms of the social checks involved and advantages and stuff. If the opposite is true, then they're probably not going to get anything out of him. I am going to give him a Chaogtum's Ointment as a... If I can spell that right. There it is. Ooh, nailed it. This is a really good magic item. I gave the players in Tomb as well. It's kind of just a jar of health potions. I'm going to increase the number of uses because it's going to be a giant-sized version. So I'm going to include 2d4 plus 2 doses. They'll still roll for it, but essentially they can get the effects of... what is 2d8? That's like double the health potion, isn't it? It's pretty good. But you do have to use an action. This one you cannot do as a free action. So it's actually meant to not necessarily be used in the middle of combat, but help you kind of restore hit points, almost like having an additional, 2 hit die or something. So that'll be something that they can get from him. He, depending on how it goes, he may give that up willingly. He may only give that up if they actually kill him. Like, it really depends on how this fight goes. And he's also got a necklace of like dragon teeth or something giant-y that maybe is worth some money that he can give them as well. So basically he's willing to, he's not an insane giant. He's respects the strength, and he will reward them for that, but I do want to try to keep him alive, and then I can use him again later, which will be fun. But then they can short rest after this encounter because they've got their wagon, and then they'll approach the Dark Duchess, which I'm still going to run I don't know if I want to do necessarily a formal skill challenge, but I do want to have it to where they have to, maybe just a series of hazards to cross the icebergs, ice flows, the floating ice chunks in the sea of moving ice, because I don't think that should just be a simple like, hey, let's run over this area and get on the boat. There's just nothing. I feel like there should be something more there. So my idea initially is just to have them roll, which I think I went over this on Monday, an acrobatics or athletics check to cross. And this, I think we're looking, I'm going to go back to the overlay map for a second. I'm also debating on how many times I want them to actually make this check. So if they get to this, get out of the way, Dark Duchess. There we go. So if they can get to the edge of the shoreline, then they've got, I mean, look at that. That's a mile. That's, that's got to be at least a couple checks, I would think, to cross this area. Maybe, I think I mentioned I would like to do 2, but if they maybe pass 2 with flying colors, maybe do 3. In terms of, and I'm thinking, and first of all, the wagon cannot go across this area. It's way too, like, it's way too dangerous. Like, it's too heavy. The reindeer, like everything, it's just, they should realize it pretty quick. And if they don't, then Ballista will just inform them. Like, there's no way this fucking wagon is going across this sea, this ocean that's got icebergs floating in it. And the players can make it across, but it will be like a series of checks. The only reason a skill challenge might make it more interesting is that, of course, that opens up the possibility of players making different kinds of checks and being clever and outside the box. But the reason I'm not leaning towards that is because this is not something that the group succeeds or fails at together. Well, maybe it is if they're all in the same, like, floating iceberg or something. But I was thinking more like it's just a series. Like, if one person fails a check, then that one person then falls through the ice and other people have to respond to that. Which is why I was thinking, okay, just everybody that is still normally walking has to make that check. And maybe what's really funny is we can have Mr. Thimbleweed use his fucking Land's Stride that he was so happy about getting. Land is a lot of options. And is it Land's Stride? Land's Stride is Land Stride. Moving through non-magical difficult terrain costs you no extra movement. You can pass through non-magical plants without being slowed by them without taking damage. Our ice flows, not plants. So it's really just specifically plant-based, other than difficult terrain. So actually, I don't think Land Stride would help you here. I was thinking it was more of a environmental hazard question, but I don't think that's going to be the case here. Mainly because, yes, it's difficult terrain, but all difficult terrain does is it makes you slow down half movement, and if you're not in combat or not in immediate danger, I don't see why that matters. So I don't see why to impose difficult terrain if you're not in the circumstances where it matters how fast you go. But it does matter on having to nimbly cross your way across these patches of ice. So in that case, I think acrobatics is a definite, but I was thinking also allowing athletics, because I just think anything that's, physical movement based should be athletics as well. But I would allow either one of those. To cross, I was thinking about having it be a fairly low check, so that you really, because these are big, it should be not too hard, but you can definitely like really slip up and mess up. So that's why I'm thinking of making it just a DC 10. But it's an endurance test, so they have to make probably 3 of these, unless like the first 2 rounds go by really poorly for the players, where they're just shit in the bed, they're falling in the water, and it goes really bad for them. But every time they fall, then I like having them make an athletics check at disadvantage to try and get themselves out. I guess somebody else could help them out as well, but at that point, you start wondering, like, can everybody reach everybody else, or is there some kind of marching order they have to worry about? How technical do you want to get? There were also some ideas about if somebody falls in, because the way the frigid water rules work is that somebody can exist inside of these extreme frigid waters for a number of minutes equal to their constitution score, I believe, which means it's kind of pointless to do that. To do an immediate hazard like that, because somebody could fall in it, assuming you can immediately pull them out, then there's no harm, no foul, and that felt disappointing to me. Although people have pointed out that, well, then they're drenched, so if you wanted to roll a... Really, the case would be not necessarily that the water will kill you, but the effects of being in cold clothing outside in this area. Like, suddenly you've essentially negated the effect of your cold weather clothing. So maybe that's why I could give the excuse of, okay, if they don't have a way to warm themselves up, which I don't think they would in the middle of like an iceberg floating, then maybe they have to make that con save anyway. So I'm thinking about just either way I justify it. I think if they're in the water, they fail another save, then they have to make a con save for cold, and maybe I make them keep doing that unless they have some way of, you know, warming. Which I guess you could, like, okay, we're gonna strip down, we need a torch. Like, just how technical do I want to get about this? I don't know. And I'm thinking about just having a couple rounds go by of having to do that. Just so some kind of environmental thing. So if you have any tips or advice on how to run an interesting environmental hazard involving frigid water and cold conditions, that's what we're kind of looking at. And it's a unique situation that I don't see us repeating too often, so I'm willing to make things pretty challenging for the players and make this part of the dungeon design. Because normally they're traveling over the tundra, they've got their cold weather clothing, they've got a wagon they can ride in, like they're really not exposed to the elements to the degree that they will be crossing these actual like iceberg dungeons. So any thoughts on that, let me know, but I plan on beating them up a little bit further. So by the time they get Dark Touches, hopefully they'll be a little bit on their back foot. They can hear, once they approach the ice troll, you hear within 15 feet of the ship, which, what does this map actually looks like in terms of dynamic lighting? Okay. What's interesting is this one... Oh, it still shows all that, though, so I'm going to have to fix this. And I've discussed about whether or not, because this is actually the same level, but this just shows the upper level, but there's nothing really to do up here versus just putting them on this map, which shows the proper doors they can get to. So I may just put them on this map and then just describe, you know, the top part of this map. Or like, yeah, there's stairs going up, you can see all these claws and scratch marks and stuff, but there's plenty of that here. So I think, in fact, there's a weird like faded out thing on the second row. So I think I'm not, so in other words, I may most likely not even use this third one, this leftmost map, and just use this middle one from when they first get on here. But let's see what the dynamic lighting actually looks like here. If I throw players on here, if I put you here, that actually, I might actually put you on the other side to give you some room. Yeah, let's put you guys, if I put you here. Oh, you're not on the token layer. Good point. You're on the dynamic lighting layer. There we go. Then, it's really hard to tell what this is because the way the dynamic lighting's drawn. Most likely I won't actually put them on this map, but I'll have them on there and then I'll move them to there as they make it up to the ship itself. Why? Clearly this is not calculating their tokens correctly. Why is it doing 37? Is this not the right? Shouldn't I be able to drag their tokens with the updated versions? Nobody's is correct. 36. Okay, it's just showing that they're level 4 versions or something for some reason. 17. What is going on? I guess I can just copy and paste them instead of dragging them. Is there proper tokens then? Yeah, the far left one might change. No, because they have 59, so that's still not right. Is this the bug I'm looking at? Why is it doing this? It should be updating their... Okay, that worked. But that didn't. This is so weird. That is so bizarre. It should be updating. tied to HP. It's tied. What is going on? This has got to be just a bug. Not updating their stats correctly. That represents Frey, but Frey's got like 100 and some hit points. And then is that correct for Celeste? That actually does look right. 76. Okay, I don't know what's going on. It's got to be a bug then. There it is. What? You guys saw me. I didn't change a damn thing. I'm going crazy here. All right, let's see if I can get them. 28. Okay, that might be right. I don't think Edmund is. Raymond's been able to level up yet. 29 56, yeah. Does he have minus 10? That's the other thing, is everybody's got temporary hit points, I think. You know what? I should just copy and paste from the other one then. Frey does not. So that's something we forgot at the last session, is that he did his temporary hit point thing. Oops. Oh, I guess he is. Okay, yeah, he needs to. So Edmund should have another 15 temporary hit points then. Alright, well, man could go crazy looking at his player's character sheet, so maybe I should stop doing that. Let me. I can drag them onto this map again. And yeah, the first one might look good in terms of just the outside of the map. Oh, I see. It's gonna. So the dynamic lighting isn't drawn around the ship on this side. You can see the whole ship. But the ship is above them, so they still have to climb up. So, which once you make it up, it looks like this, which looks pretty cool. You could try and get clever and superimpose. I could crop this out and try to put it on top of this thing. But the problem is you're still dealing with dynamic lighting. That's from the below, so there's no way to really do that. I think. You can turn like this into this, but you can't like put this on top of this because you still run up. You still have the dynamic lighting would be drawn for the rooms. All right, so you can hear the troll when you get within 15 feet of the ship. So basically, after our gauntlet of getting through the ice, give the trapped player increasing difficulty each round on checks. When they're trapped in the ice, I mean, it's going to be straight up disadvantage. If you fall into the ice and you're trying to get out, you will have disadvantage trying to get out of there. The ship is not as abandoned as it appeared. Nice trolls there. Characters can surprise the troll to remain quiet as they make their way into the ship's hold area, which is the one below. So that's kind of nice. The players can be alerted to a creature. I can already anticipate somebody trying to. Oh, that's true. I can do that. You can make the ship have wall. One way, but not the other. Yeah. Bad thing is, if I redo dynamic lighting, I'm gonna have to redo. Maybe not. How much dynamic lighting is it? Is it just this side? Okay, you know what? I might actually use this to test that wall feature. I've never done that before. This would be a good way to test it because you would be able to see over the side. Okay, so let's delete this, he said nervously. And then we're on the dynamic lighting layer. And we've got a regular wall. Use that to shore this up. Oops, shit. Polygon in line. Okay, so that one's fixed. No, wrong job or whatever. So now we can make this one the one-way wall. One way. How does this work? Okay, so it looks like it's showing me. Okay, I want you to do it that way. Do this. Do this in action. This took like 6 years for them to implement this, I think. Alright, let's see if I did it right. I don't think I did. Oh, I did it backwards. Shoot. Okay, I read it backwards, I guess. The neat effects when I did it the other way. Can I just reverse it? Oh, I can. Slick. Okay, I don't have to redo it. That's nice. That's nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when you get up, so look at that. That's really cool. You start here, you climb up onto the ship, and now you can see, and I'll change it to the other side too. But this part is still closed off because you're looking at the upper end. And the problem is you could go up there, but then there's also, well, maybe I should use this side then. I'm debating on what to do. I want to just leave them on this one and just kind of describe going up the stairs, and you can see, I think I'd just describe it. I think that's easier. Better fuck around with using these two maps, which are the same level, essentially. Alright, that means I have to do it on the other side, though, which is this one. Yeah, I guess it's easier to delete it, because thankfully they didn't do the whole thing in one chunk, which is good advice to why you should not do your walls in giant chunks. So you can edit smaller chunks if you need to. It's pretty slick, though. Do it the other way. Do it wrong again. I did. Okay, for some reason the iconography is backwards to me. There we go. Okay. Nifty, nifty, nifty. So, and that's the best way I can make it look is with this, it still ends up blocking the top, which is weird because you normally would be able to see it. Only weird part. I mean, whatever. Maybe the stairs go up pretty high, and you're like, that's like another level up there, or you can go inside these areas, which is the captain's cabin. What I really want to do is draw them to here and try to get them to explore here before dealing with the monster down below. So you can hear the creature. I'm going to anticipate they're going to want to make some kind of survival check to like identify what monster it is just based on the sounds it's making. Which I believe roll as a giant. I guess I need to redo these because it's always in like a white font instead of a black one. Yeah, giant is a history or nature check. That's pretty easy to figure out. Maybe disadvantage because you don't actually see the creature, you just hear it. Approach. This, there's a different one for ship approach. That was the moving ice is going to be a thing, and then the ship approach will include hearing the ice troll. That will be a history or nature check at disadvantage. And then it would be a, I might make it higher. Maybe I'll just make the DC higher instead of disadvantage. Or I can do both. Because the goal is to make them think that the troll made all this damage. Or something. I mean, you know, whatever it is. They can, you know, once they make it up here, they can peer down and just see the troll. But the second they start moving around down here, I'm going to call them out and be like, are you rolling stealth or are you just moving around? Because if they're not rolling stealth, then it doesn't actually say, you know, if they're not moving stealth, then I guess you could just say the troll instantly detects them, right? If they're not choosing to move stealthy. Because otherwise, I mean, it takes a DC 12 stealth check. So if they're not moving stealthily, then I think the troll just auto-detects them and doesn't, or would, I guess, crash up these stairs and go after them. The bad thing is that kind of slightly ruins my clever girl moment. Ideally, I would actually like for them to get the jump on this troll, because then I can get the jump on them with a second troll. So yes, I'm thinking about using a second troll, especially because I leveled them up again since the last time I prepared Dark Duchess. So I think it's only appropriate that I throw a whole second troll at them. And they will definitely fight to the death and make things pretty difficult for the players. But they don't have to deal with the troll. If they stealth on the deck, you know, you can make some... Can you investigate this area? Main deck. DC 12 survival check. Can correctly surmise that a single enormous creature did all the damage. So that would actually tell you that, especially if they just look down and can see this troll, which it's dark down here. So I would rule that you'd have to have dark vision to be able to see it, but most of the party does anyway. Yeah, there's no passive stealth. Yeah. Mating season. Oh god. It does say that if you try to use fire to melt the ice. Oh, so it takes twice as long, but does not alert the troll. Whereas if you start chipping it away, that will alert the troll. So actually, if they do try to break into the cabin, that will summon the troll fight. Which, I don't know, maybe that makes things more interesting. If they just summon the one troll with their noise, it comes crashing up and attacks them, but I leave the second one all the way down here, so that by the time they come down here to look at the treasure, that one comes bursting out and is a second troll. That would make things easier for the players, because I've separated those two fights. Versus otherwise they don't have a fight when they get down to the boardroom. In fact, I think the kobolds would then be freed once the troll's taken care of, but hopefully the players don't short rest in between taking out the troll and then investigating the lower level, because kobolds would come out, presumably. Trolls gotta have dark vision, right? Point. They do. Yeah. Most creatures tend to, I find. In fact, so many creatures in this entire universe have it. That's a wonder anybody needs any lights. I mean, it's a wonder that humans have been able to get by as long as they have. Being one of the few creatures in the world that can't see in the dark, at least somewhat. They also have advantage on perception checks that rely on smell. But I guess that doesn't necessarily help it in this case. It's also not actively looking. It's still like, you know, wanted to get into these kobolds. So I guess my main question is, if the troll gets alerted up here, do I want to send both trolls up to the top? At the very least, they would be staggered by a round or two, since one of them is like in this other room, you know, eating goats, basically. I assume, what kind of movement speed does a troll have? 30 feet, which is not very fast. So even if it dashes, if I really want to run it mechanically sound... Alright, if it dashes, it could make it up there. But that would be its full turn. So I guess round 2, you could have it dash all the way up. In fact, even if it makes it up there but can't attack, it still has its cold aura, so it's still doing its business. So that would actually probably be the best move to do. Round 1, this is assuming they alert the troll. The troll would come crashing up. Probably no surprise round, since they've heard something up there. Well, yeah, there probably would be a surprise round, actually, because they wouldn't know it was... I mean, even if they hear it, they didn't know it was, like, coming right at them, maybe. I don't know, that's a tricky situation. It feels weird, because I guess I would let it at least get up there and then roll initiative once it makes it up there, and not have them roll initiative just because it's been aggroed. But then, in the second round, the other one can dash its way up there, but it would have to dash to reach there. Wouldn't be able to do any actions in the second round. That still gives the players a little bit of a reprieve. Obviously, their best strategy is to stealthily reconnaissance this whole area, realize there's a troll down there, and try to get the jump on it. So unfortunately, it means they probably won't be able to get in here. I want them to do this encounter, because there's a lot of cool baddies I got in here and some good treasure. But it's ultimately going to be up to them how they want to approach that situation versus the trolls down below. And of course, when do we have the dragon up here? Treacherous Clouds of Darkness, some of the forecastle, the Foxhill. These are all the little cabins that are up here, which there's nothing really up here. I was going to do just some world building and environmental storytelling, and if the players explore, they'll quickly realize there's a warren of kobolds have lived here. I assume they would not have anything that would be particularly valuable. Everything would go to the dragon, so there wouldn't be any real treasure to loot in here, and it wouldn't make sense for them to have potions and things. I think every bit of loot that's going to be in this dungeon is either going to be in the dragon's hoard or in the one area that the kobolds have not broken into, and maybe the dragon doesn't care about either, is in here, which is the captain's personal stash. You can get 3 flasks of oil, 5 bars of lime soap, and 3 sets of manacles and torches. There you go. A hooded lantern, ropes and nets, all kinds of stuff in the storage. Otherwise, the captain's cabin is where I've changed things around, where first you have to get through it, which is that actually back on D1? There's no check involved. It's just you can use a pick or similar tool, which obviously people just try to hack their axes, chip away at the ice, which if they start doing that, that's going to aggro the troll and start the troll fight. But then afterwards, presumably they can just continue doing it. Or they can melt the fire stealthily. Presumably they could use some magic to melt the fire, but I don't know if they actually have any fire magic. Is this the one party in D&D's existence that doesn't have fire magic? Have a chance per iceberg for a collision with another iceberg, forcing a deck save at disadvantage. Ice is slippy to not slide into the water. That's true. That would help shake things up a bit. When enough players are in an area, instead of just making them roll those checks, instead do like, hey, this, you all jump on this berg and it's tilting to the side. You all need to make a save. But only individuals that fail to save will fall in. That's kind of the goal I'm using. I don't want to make it a big, weird group thing. But yeah, that would change things up slightly. I guess the difference is a deck save versus somebody who's been relying on athletics or acrobatics. So in the cabin, it's going to be a fight with an undead pirate captain and some crew members, which is the white stat block. This is an area the kobolds have not been able to get into. So they will... the weird thing is, if they stealth around and they do have that bird cage, I think it might take attunement, and I think Valravn unattuned to it, as I recall, but that's a good point. That would help them here. They could actually trigger this fight with the undead pirates before fighting the troll. And you gotta imagine at that point, that would alert the troll. I may just suspend disbelief for a moment because I don't necessarily want to have my troll involved in that fight, necessarily. That would be interesting. But the players, maybe the players try to use that to their advantage. Maybe they would try to make noise and call the beast up here to try to help them with the undead. The troll might not want to fuck with undead, though. It can't eat them. It can eat the players. That's a tricky situation. That's a very unique series of events, but it could involve them triggering the pirate fight before and still have the troll down there. The troll hasn't been alerted yet. I'll have to think about that one. I don't think anything up here is actually usable. Any con to avoid exhaustion once drenched should be a high DC or a disadvantage because it's freezing and they're wet. Unless they have some means of becoming unwet. Yeah, undead are not tasty. I would imagine it would not care about the undead, but it would care about the players. I don't know, would it be smart enough to try to attack the players in the middle of that fight? Or maybe be smart enough to be alerted to them, but maybe it's watching the fight to see You know, if the player survived, then it attacks them after that. How tactically prescient are these trolls? Intelligence of 7, wisdom of 9. They're not feral, they're not geniuses. Mostly just real strong. So that could happen. Also, this cabin's going to be pretty. The Undead Pirate Cabin's going to be loud and fun to roleplay for me. And he's just a combatant, but so he will definitely make enough noise to alert the troll, I would think. But maybe I can just have the troll be alerted to the players, just have it be hanging back to where the players are done with that combat and they don't hear the troll anymore. And then they like maybe they peek around or try to spy on it, and then it like launches itself at them right after a fight, so they haven't had a chance to short rest. That could be pretty interesting. One thing I still need to do is kind of redesign the treasure pile that's in the dragon's pseudo horde down in D9. The reason they're here for this treasure pile, so I don't mind giving them some good shit. They're also, you know, I've scaled up the enemies, so it only makes sense that I scale up the treasure. If anybody has any suggestions for additional or changes to put in here, I'm certainly amiable to that. I am most likely going to design a magic bow to put in there for Thimbleweed, but it will probably be on the 3rd or 4th layer. It would require the players to really stick around and try to get at this horde. I think it has the same rules as the door, where they can spend an hour chipping away, but it's each layer of ice, or it takes twice as long with using the fire. And I'm probably going to try to time it where, like, by the time they, you know, melt away the 3rd one, they see what's in the 4th spot, that's when maybe they hear the dragon on top, you know, crash down, to where they're not going to have much time to try to get at that, to where if they want to get that 4th layer, they're going to have to do some real fancy, like, distractions, or you know, Valravn can try to talk his way out of it or do something insane. I don't know what's going to transpire. The fact that they've already met this dragon, they know it's very strong, but they also know they can kind of like get chummy with her and chat with her. Maybe will lead them to being a little more confident that they can get away with it. But on the other hand, it's one thing to meet a dragon out and about when you're just passing through. It's another thing to like break into her home, essentially, or at least her like storage unit. Like find that you know, you may have passed somebody in the street, be like, hey, you know, it was nice chatting to you, and then you go home to you go to your storage unit, and that person's just in there rifling through your shit. You know, even if you were nice to that person earlier, it doesn't mean you're going to treat them the same way here. I can't imagine that dragon's going to be in a very good mood, so it would be really hilarious to watch the players work their way out of that one. We're still going to have a whole nother week to talk about that, I think, because there's, at the very least, we're not going to have Aviatris be triggered during this Friday session. I can't imagine that would happen, because to me, it's less about how much time they spend here, and instead, it's a total, like, up to me thing about when she appears, and I think it's not until they start digging through this treasure hoard specifically. Presumably, they've cleared all the enemies out. Maybe they've forgotten about or left the undead cabin behind, which that would be a bummer. I may remind them of that if they're digging through this hoard and be like, hey, you also had that frozen door up there. But once they get down to the bottom layers of the treasure hoard, I think that's the time when the dragon appears, and then the players have to start making those decisions of how much loot can we grab versus how dangerous is it going to be for this dragon to stick around and be able to just annihilate us, even if she can't properly, you know, attack in here or whatever else. Do they have magic boots yet? They do not have magic boots yet, I don't think. There is like a, what is it, Boots of the Hinterlands or something? Or just Winterlands, okay. I think I skipped those boots, the boots that were on the mountain climb quest. I don't think I gave them to those. Which is another way to give them resistance to cold damage, which is pretty good. Ignore difficult terrain created by ice or snow. Can tolerate temperatures as low as -50 degrees. Which, by the way, Valravn being, he does have the Ring of Warmth. And so if he falls through the ice, I don't think he has any problems, because it does say that if they have resistance or immunity to cold, then they basically suffer no ill effects from frigid water or anything of that. So he's essentially immune to that whole gauntlet run of going through the area, which that would be a good excuse of hey, if you had these boots, you would avoid a lot of that. And you know, this is one of those kinds of items where it would be very situational in most campaigns, but in this campaign, it's almost like a must-have because you just figure like every single area is going to involve like cold things coming at it, either cold monsters or cold hazards or something coming at us. Oh, was it Dugan? So I swear Mountain Climb had some magic boots on somebody. There was like a picture of that. Now you're gonna make me look it up. Let's see, where was? I thought there was even like a little picture of somebody that was dead with boots sticking out at the end of Mountain Climb. Yeah, this one. Oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe they weren't magic boots then. Maybe I'm wrong. Known only as blue boots. I thought those were literally magic boots. The Captain's fur coat. Well, what I had in there was that bag of tricks. That it's I talked about this on Monday, but it's a unique bag of tricks I'm going to design, which is that cool item that you can pull out a random Pokeball essentially and throw it and summon an instant animal companion, and it could be anything from a little small, bullshit creature to something that's like a dire wolf or something that's actually pretty useful, or polar bear. Or a giant goat. I think you're right. I think these are just regular boots. That's reminding me of it though. Is that picture? It's got to be magic boots, right? Nope. That'd be pretty good. Boots of striding and springing are always pretty useful to getting across a lot of hazards. We use those in Prince of the Apocalypse. We used winged boots in Chris's campaign. Gave it to our ranger who could just fly around and shoot all day. That seemed pretty damn powerful. I don't think we've used boots of Elvenkind before. The crazy thing is, because this is a Dragon's Hoard, like you could literally put pretty much anything in this hoard pile, because the idea is this probably was part of the treasure that the pirate captain had, and then she might have added to it as she realized, hey, there's already a pretty good amount of treasure here. When I'm going around taking down ships, I can get whatever treasure things people have and then throw them in here. And like I said, I'm scaling this up to the next tier level, so maybe I'll look at the Dungeon Master's Guide tables and figure out some good stuff to put in here. I don't like putting a fake Wand of Orcus. I think that's pretty dumb. Armor is probably not as useful for this party because hardly anybody wears armor except for Thimbleweed. I could see a Cloak Protection being a lot more useful, especially with a monk and a barbarian. They both probably fight over that. And both the Drift Globe and Quiver, that's the combination. Drift Globe and Quiver is the Driver. Also as a driver, are low level and dumb, so I can easily upgrade that to something a little more interesting. And like I said, I was thinking about some kind of magic bow weapon for Thimbleweed, even though I just got him a sword, but he needs something like that. And then, yeah, maybe a Cloak Protection and then something else. And put it to where they're on different layers, too. I like that the first layer is mainly just coins. The second layer, you start getting more interesting, like gems and expensive stuff, and then maybe, like this one as an example of a single-use statue figurine that can be used, like a scroll, essentially. So I could do something like that. And then the third layer is when you actually, and all of these give you money and stuff, which is kind of cool, but then you start getting actual magic items as you go deeper, which is pretty fun. Something could tie to Revel's End. That could be interesting. So actually a story-based piece of loot. Interesting idea. And of course, there's a goat in here. That goat's got to have some kind of dialogue and backstory. It'll be the last surviving goat. It'll be kept here by the kobolds. And it knew it was essentially going to be fed to the dragon at some point because the kobolds have been really shitty at finding food. And it's been having to feed all their like milking goats. Now it was the last one, and then recently, very recently, since the goat's still alive, these trolls broke in and scared the kobolds, and basically they can get all the information from the kobolds they can from the goat, but if they want to just talk to the goat instead, that's perfectly fine. I think the kobolds, are they just locked in here? Let's see. The characters must break down the door to enter the cabins. The kobolds have no intention of letting them in. The door has an AC 15, 5 hit points. And immune to poison psychic damage. As an action, a character can shoulder or kick open the door with a successful DC 20 strength check. Or presumably you could just swing your weapon and hit it, which would probably be a lot easier. 15 hit points, 15 AC, 5 hit points. Just break it down. You could do the Here's Johnny thing. Break it down with the axe. I think it does mention they all attack first, which is pretty funny. At that point, it becomes a trap, I believe. Like you open a door and these javelins just start flying at you. That's a trap. However, you don't put them immediately in initiative necessarily. I would probably say, okay, instead of rolling initiative, if you want to say something like, you can do that, or you can just kill these kobolds. Whatever. I guess I could make them more interesting kobolds. I do have more interesting kobold stat blocks for the off chance the players actually want to fight. What do I have? Or maybe I don't. I thought I had more interesting kobolds. Didn't I use interesting kobolds in Beautiful Mine? Am I going crazy? I had all the traps and stuff. Maybe I just didn't literally use their stat block. I guess I just used the traps themselves. I had them. I know. I think it's Tomb of Beast that has different. Kobold Alchemist, Kobold Chieftain. And there's the Inventor. That's what I was picturing. The one that puts all the traps everywhere. Delicious. So why not, instead of throwing spears, they throw some of these... Well, I guess they're all pretty low level, though. Nobody's going to care. Although summoning a swarm of insects is no fucking joke. What's their... I mean, their javelin's a +0. It does, like, no damage. This is dumb. It's so dumb. Can we do something that's going to at least make a difference? They just, like, gave them javelins that they can't really even use. Hell, acid. They can throw flasks of acid. That does 2d6 acid damage on a hit. That's pretty solid. Yeah. Acid bombs. Where are they getting this acid? I don't know. It seems like you'd be able to loot that somewhere if you were looting through their rooms. Poke him with a scorpion on a stick. All the rest of these are kind of goofy. Which is part of the fun, but again, this is not what I'm trying to have players do. Trapsmith is from Tomb of Beasts. I was thinking of that one too. I think this one's got better base stats. Oh lord, why did they do it like that? It's a big paragraph. Oh no. I used these in Tomb of Annihilation. I remember that. I think it was Tomb. Shredder and Stun, like just grenades. Oh, imagine one of them just throws one of these things out. 46 piercing damage. We've saved you. Throw a shrapnel grenade into him. I'll get from a Rimmeraz. What? No. The rot, did I skip over that one? Oh yeah, rot grub. It's a hazard in the square. Oh, there's no link to what even that means. Swarm of rot grubs. Is a rot grub. Ew, they're nasty. Finger-sized maggots eat living or dead flesh. +0 to hit, does 0 damage. Target is infested by rot. That's gross. The start of each of the player's turns, the target takes 1d6 piercing damage for rot grub infesting it, applying fire to the bite wound before the end of the turns. Next turn deals 1 fire damage to the target and kills the rot grubs. After this time, the rot grubs are too far under the skin to be burned. If a target infested with rot grubs ends its turn with 0 hit points, it dies as rot grubs burrow into its heart and kill it. Good God. What is going on with this creature? It doesn't do any damage though. Oh, that does. Sorry, it does 1d6 per rot grub infesting it. Okay, this all seems like a very complicated way to kill them from the inside out. Wow, that is pretty nasty. That's okay. That seems like inappropriate for a kobold to throw at somebody, but I do like that as a very dark dungeon death trap thing. Maybe it's too. I don't know. The acid vial is the easy. I don't. These kobolds do not have much means to do anything too fancy. So I think the acid, throwing vials of acid are probably fine. More the speed that I need. In which case, should I just add the Cobalt Inventor then? They've got it in their stat bar, just so I can look at it. Or some of them could throw Alchemist Fire. I don't know. Or daggers. Some of them could just throw daggers. Scarabs from the Mummy, yeah. Those do seem like old school, yeah. Something you wouldn't normally see these days. Something that could like burrow inside of you and kill you from the inside. Sir. I mean, hey, if you guys are level 8, you're gonna find slightly more advanced kobolds to deal with. And it's not meant to be a... Oh, nice. They are in the stat block. Okay, that's really cool. Perfect. Not meant to be a normal combat encounter, also. I like the idea that when the players burst through the rooms, I guess it depends on if they're actually making an effort to talk to them through the doors or explain what's going on. Maybe they wouldn't go crazy and attack. So, good socialization could avoid the worst of that. Otherwise, they're going to get some acid in the face. So, pretty straightforward, but, the biggest question is when Aviatrix arrives and keeping track of the Ice Troll's awareness. Which is going to be a little tricky, just because basically if the players do nothing, it's going to be alerted pretty quickly. And run up to the fight, and immediately they got a fight on their hands pretty much as soon as they make it up to anywhere in this dungeon. Alright, why does it just do this sometimes? Alright, maybe I have to open their character sheet first. Look, you should have 80 hit points. Okay. There you go. Okay. I guess you have to open everybody's character sheet first, and then it'll update properly. That's still a fucking weird bug. So, I think we're feeling pretty good about this week's session, because I don't think, the giant fight will take a huge amount of time. I would assume they're going to need a short rest after that, but hopefully it won't spend, all of their hit points or anything. We'll make it to here, and it'll be exploration-based for a good chunk of the beginning. Unless they decide to just immediately jump down and fight the troll, which they could do, then we'll run into combat pretty quickly. A big combat one, so there might be back-to-back, so I hope they short rest after that giant fight. What's interesting here is I have to make a decision if they decide to short rest in this dungeon. In terms of when, and again, does the dragon just always appear when they get into the horde? But then I can make a funny thing where it's like, oh, because you guys short rested, now it's coming now instead of when it comes later, and it would always come then, that kind of thing. But I guess we'll figure it out as we get closer to exploring more of the Dark Duchess dungeon, and hopefully they are encouraged to go into this undead pirate room and fight those guys and get even more treasure. And the kobolds then provide the socializing, so hey, this dungeon has it all. I'm looking forward to it. I think that will do it for this Thursday edition of Crafting Icewind Dale. If you enjoyed the content, please do check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Thomas, Adam, Stan, William, I'm Loud, Kyle, Brandon, Genocider, David, Nebula99, Eclectic, Roleplayer Roll, James, and Lindsay. And gold patrons: RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, and James. Thank you all very much for your support. I will see you all for D&D tomorrow.